Before we talk about numbers on a blood pressure monitor, let us pause and consider something quieter and more intimate. Every bite of food we take sends a chemical message into our bloodstream, a message that either eases the tension in our arteries or silently tightens it. High blood pressure does not arrive suddenly like a storm. It is patiently constructed, meal by meal, habit by habit, often by foods that feel familiar, comforting, and harmless. Before we talk about blood pressure numbers, medications, or age, let us begin with something more personal: the quiet relationship between what we eat and how our blood vessels feel every single day. Every meal sends instructions into the body. Some instructions say relax, release, flow easily. Others say tighten, hold on, stay alert. High blood pressure is not sudden. It is built slowly, through daily food choices that seem ordinary, even comforting. When blood pressure is high, the foundation of eating must shift toward calm and balance. The body needs foods that reduce fluid overload, relax artery walls, and lower inflammation. This means whole foods, close to their natural form. Fresh vegetables should make up half the plate: leafy greens, cucumbers, tomatoes, carrots, broccoli. Foods rich in potassium and magnesium that help the kidneys release excess sodium. Whole grains like oats, brown rice, and barley provide fiber that stabilizes blood sugar and prevents pressure spikes after meals. Lean proteins such as lentils, beans, chickpeas, fish, and small portions of skinless poultry support the heart without clogging blood vessels. Healthy fats from nuts, seeds, olive oil, and avocado help blood vessels stay flexible and responsive. At the same time, there are foods that quietly push blood pressure higher and must be avoided or strictly limited. Highly salty foods are the most dangerous: processed meats, sausages, fast food burgers, packaged snacks, instant noodles, canned soups, pickles, and sauces loaded with sodium. These foods increase blood volume, forcing the heart to work harder. Refined carbohydrates and added sugars, white bread, pastries, sweets, sugary drinks, cause insulin spikes that promote sodium retention and vessel stiffness. Fried foods and trans fats damage the inner lining of arteries, making it harder for them to relax. Excess alcohol and too much caffeine overstimulate the nervous system, keeping blood pressure in a constant state of alert. Fruit plays a special role in managing high blood pressure, but it must be eaten with awareness. Fruits are not the enemy. Excess and poor timing are. The most heart-friendly fruits are those rich in potassium and fiber: bananas, oranges, apples, pears, berries, kiwi, and pomegranate. These fruits help counter sodium, improve blood vessel function, and reduce inflammation. The ideal amount is 2 servings per day. 1 serving equals 1 medium fruit or 1 cup of chopped fruit. It is best to eat fruit whole, not as juice, because fiber slows sugar absorption and protects blood pressure. Avoid fruit juices, canned fruits and syrup, and dried fruits in large quantities, as they concentrate sugar and can raise pressure indirectly. What matters most is not perfection, but consistency. High blood pressure improves when the body feels safe, nourished, and unburdened. Each balanced meal tells the arteries they no longer need to brace themselves. Over time, pressure softens, not because the body was forced, but because it was finally supported. This is not about restriction. It is about choosing foods that help the heart breathe a little easier, beat a little calmer, and carry life forward with less resistance. The first group of foods that quietly push blood pressure higher are those loaded with sodium, often hidden in processed and packaged items that feel convenient and familiar. When we eat foods like deli meats, bacon, hot dogs, canned soups, salty snacks, and fast food meals, we are not just tasting flavor, we are sending an invisible signal to our arteries and kidneys. Sodium, in small amounts, is essential for bodily functions. It helps transmit nerve impulses, regulate fluids, and support muscle function. But when it is present in excess, it begins to overwhelm the delicate balance the body works so hard to maintain. Each extra gram of sodium draws water into the bloodstream, increasing blood volume and forcing the heart to pump harder, while the walls of arteries experience higher pressure with every beat. The body, in response, activates regulatory mechanisms to cope with this load, but these are short-term solutions that over time lead to chronic strain and subtle damage to the vascular system. What we often forget is that the rise in blood pressure is not immediate. It is a gradual conversation between the salt we consume and the complex systems of the body that respond to it. Processed foods are particularly deceptive because their salt content is often invisible, baked into the product to preserve shelf life, enhance taste, and create cravings that make us reach for more. A single slice of packaged bread may not seem significant, yet when multiplied across multiple servings throughout a day, the sodium intake can surpass recommended limits without us realizing it. Restaurant meals, similarly, are engineered for flavor rather than biology, often containing far more salt than our bodies can handle comfortably. The arteries, although resilient, are not impervious to repeated stress. Over time, this chronic high-pressure environment can reduce arterial elasticity, making them stiffer and less able to accommodate the natural pulsations of the heartbeat. The heart, sensing the increased resistance, adjusts by working harder, which can lead to further strain and long-term complications. Even small, habitual choices, adding an extra pinch of salt to meals, snacking on chips, or regularly eating frozen dinners, cumulatively teach the body to operate at a higher baseline pressure. It is not that sodium is inherently evil. It is that excess shifts the equilibrium in ways the body cannot sustainably compensate for. Understanding this mechanism invites a reflective approach to eating. Reading labels, choosing fresh over processed, and allowing the natural flavors of food to emerge without heavy salt seasoning can begin to change the internal environment of the body. By replacing heavily salted foods with vegetables, fresh meats, and legumes, we gradually reduce the signaling that tells arteries to constrict, the kidneys to hold onto water, and the heart to beat harder. The transformation is subtle but profound. It is a dialogue between conscious choice and bodily response, illustrating how each bite is not only nourishment but a message to the most vital systems of life. Over time, by moderating sodium intake, the arteries regain flexibility, the heart experiences less strain, and the overall rhythm of circulation becomes more harmonious, allowing the body to function with more ease, resilience, and balance. Refined carbohydrates and added sugars are often overlooked culprits in the quiet rise of blood pressure, yet their impact on the body is profound and multifaceted. Foods such as white bread, pastries, sugary cereals, sodas, and desserts may feel harmless, even comforting, but they send rapid and powerful signals to the bloodstream that the body must respond to. When we consume these foods, they are broken down quickly into glucose, causing a sharp spike in blood sugar levels. The pancreas responds by releasing insulin, a hormone designed to help cells absorb glucose for energy. But repeated surges of insulin do more than regulate blood sugar. They also promote the retention of sodium by the kidneys, subtly increasing blood volume and, in turn, blood pressure. This is not an immediate effect we can feel, yet over time, it quietly contributes to the steady elevation of pressure within the arteries. Added sugars also trigger low-grade inflammation, a defensive response by the body that over months and years begins to stiffen arterial walls. The lining of the blood vessels, called the endothelium, becomes less efficient at producing nitric oxide, the molecule responsible for relaxing and dilating arteries. As a result, the vessels lose their elasticity, and the heart must exert more force to circulate blood. The cycle is insidious because sugar-laden foods are designed to be consumed repeatedly. Their taste, texture, and quick energy release make them highly appealing, creating a pattern of repeated metabolic stress. Even seemingly small choices, like adding sweetened coffee or snacking on a dessert after meals, accumulate into a significant physiological burden. It is important to recognize that the body is not failing in this scenario. It is responding intelligently to what it receives. Each insulin surge, each sodium retention, each subtle inflammatory response is part of a complex system attempting to maintain equilibrium. Yet when the input, refined carbohydrates and added sugars, is constant, the system adapts by elevating blood pressure, creating a new baseline that becomes harder to reverse. Whole foods, in contrast, release glucose slowly and steadily, allowing insulin to work without overstimulating the system. Fiber-rich vegetables, fruits in moderation, legumes, and whole grains provide glucose gradually while also offering compounds that reduce inflammation and improve endothelial function. Choosing these foods over highly processed options allows the body to regulate itself naturally, reducing unnecessary stress on arteries and the heart. By understanding the biochemical conversation initiated by refined carbohydrates and sugars, we gain insight into why consistent dietary choices have such a strong influence on blood pressure. The key is not eliminating carbohydrates entirely, but choosing those that respect the body's timing, rhythm, and natural mechanisms for maintaining balance. This subtle, reflective approach transforms eating from a series of habits into a deliberate act of care for the most essential systems of life, allowing the body to function more harmoniously and maintain pressure at levels closer to its natural equilibrium. Fried foods and trans-fat-laden items represent another silent, yet powerful, influence on the rise of blood pressure, acting in ways that are both structural and chemical within the body. When we consume deep-fried snacks, commercially baked goods, packaged cookies, fast food items, and other products high in industrially produced trans fats, we are not merely ingesting calories or flavor. We are altering the very lining of our arteries and the composition of our blood. These fats interfere with the endothelium, the delicate layer of cells that lines every blood vessel, which plays a crucial role in regulating vascular tone and blood flow. Normally, the endothelium produces nitric oxide, a molecule that signals smooth muscles in the vessel walls to relax, allowing blood to flow easily. Trans fats, however, reduce the availability of nitric oxide, causing arteries to lose flexibility and creating resistance against which the heart must work harder. Over time, this increased resistance elevates blood pressure, not as an abrupt crisis but as a gradual adaptation to the repeated stress imposed by diet. The impact of fried foods extends beyond arterial stiffening. They contribute to systemic inflammation, subtly signaling the immune system that there is damage that must be addressed. Chronic low-level inflammation further compromises arterial function and can accelerate the accumulation of plaque in the arteries, adding another layer of resistance for blood flow. At the same time, trans fats influence lipid profiles, increasing levels of low-density lipoprotein, LDL, cholesterol, often called bad cholesterol, and lowering high-density lipoprotein, HDL, cholesterol, the good cholesterol that helps remove excess lipids from arteries. This imbalance not only affects the mechanical properties of the vessels but also alters biochemical signaling in ways that promote vasoconstriction and hypertension. Fried foods are particularly deceptive because they combine taste, convenience, and addictive sensory cues, encouraging repeated consumption. Even occasional indulgence, when habitual, sets a pattern that reinforces arterial stress over time. The body's response is intelligent yet unrelenting. Arteries stiffen, blood pressure rises, and the heart gradually compensates for this increased workload, often without any immediate symptoms until years later. Awareness of these mechanisms allows us to see food choices not merely as pleasure or sustenance, but as continuous messages that shape vascular health. Replacing fried items with foods rich in unsaturated fats, such as olive oil, avocado, nuts, and fatty fish, nourishes the arteries rather than stressing them. These alternatives support endothelial function, reduce inflammation, and help maintain the elasticity that allows blood vessels to respond dynamically to changing demands. Cooking methods like baking, steaming, or lightly sautéing preserve flavor while minimizing harmful compounds, creating meals that satisfy both the palate and the body. By observing the subtle dialogue between diet and arterial function, we recognize that fried and trans-fat-heavy foods are not suddenly dangerous, but gradually coercive, shaping blood pressure over time. Choosing alternatives that align with the body's natural rhythms fosters vascular resilience, allowing the heart and arteries to operate with less strain, smoother flow, and greater harmony, reinforcing the principle that what we eat is a conversation with life itself. Excess alcohol and highly caffeinated beverages have a subtle but profound influence on blood pressure, working in ways that the body feels but rarely signals as urgent until patterns have been established over time. Alcohol, for example, may initially produce a sensation of relaxation. It can lower anxiety temporarily and give the impression that blood vessels are loosening, yet this effect is fleeting. As the body metabolizes alcohol, it triggers complex hormonal and nervous system responses that ultimately lead to fluid retention and vasoconstriction. The kidneys respond to alcohol-induced changes in blood chemistry by retaining sodium and water, which increases blood volume and forces the heart to work harder. This rise in volume and pressure may not be immediately noticeable, but repeated consumption creates a cumulative effect that quietly elevates baseline blood pressure. Similarly, caffeine, found in coffee, energy drinks, and certain teas, acts as a stimulant to the nervous system. It prompts the release of stress hormones such as adrenaline, signaling the heart to beat faster and the arteries to constrict. Occasional caffeine intake is usually well tolerated, but when consumed in excess or habitually in large quantities, the body adapts to this constant stimulation by maintaining higher levels of arterial tension. The combination of these substances can amplify the pressure-raising effects in subtle ways. Alcohol and caffeine are often consumed socially or as part of daily routines, making them easy to overlook as contributors to hypertension. People may associate high blood pressure primarily with salt or weight, not realizing that these commonly enjoyed beverages create biochemical stress that the body must compensate for continuously. In both cases, the nervous system acts as an intermediary, translating chemical signals from what we drink into vascular responses. The arteries constrict, the heart accelerates, and the delicate balance of fluid and electrolytes shifts in order to maintain homeostasis. Over time, these adaptations become the new normal, raising the baseline from which blood pressure is measured. Awareness of these mechanisms invites thoughtful moderation rather than complete avoidance, acknowledging that the body's responses are intelligent, protective, and sensitive to the signals it receives. Drinking patterns can be adjusted to minimize impact, choosing smaller amounts, spacing intake over time, and avoiding mixing stimulants and depressants excessively helps prevent abrupt or chronic elevations in blood pressure. Water, herbal teas, and naturally low-caffeine alternatives can provide hydration and comfort without sending conflicting signals to the heart and arteries. By considering the cumulative influence of alcohol and caffeine alongside diet, activity, and stress, we begin to see high blood pressure not as an isolated problem but as the result of repeated, interacting signals that the body interprets according to its own rules. The body's responses are consistent and logical, yet they require thoughtful guidance from the choices we make. Reducing excessive alcohol and caffeine allows arteries to relax more fully, blood volume to normalize, and the nervous system to operate with less tension, creating conditions in which the heart does not have to work against constant resistance. In this way, moderation in consumption becomes not just a lifestyle choice but an act of nurturing the body's capacity to regulate itself naturally, illustrating the profound connection between what we drink and how our cardiovascular system thrives. Foods that are low in potassium, magnesium, and fiber quietly remove some of the body's most important natural supports for blood pressure regulation, and their absence can be just as harmful as foods that actively raise pressure. These nutrients act like internal brakes and buffers, maintaining balance within the cardiovascular system. Potassium, for example, helps the kidneys excrete excess sodium, preventing fluid buildup that would otherwise increase blood volume and strain the heart. Magnesium relaxes the smooth muscles of blood vessels, promoting flexibility and allowing arteries to accommodate the pulsations of the heartbeat without resistance. Fiber slows the absorption of sugars, reduces inflammation, and supports a healthy gut microbiome, which in turn influences metabolic and vascular function. When the diet is dominated by ultra-processed foods, refined grains, packaged snacks, sugary beverages, and convenience meals, the intake of these essential nutrients is drastically reduced. The body is left to operate without the very mechanisms designed to prevent high blood pressure, forcing it to compensate in other ways. Over time, arteries become less responsive to normal regulatory signals, and blood pressure rises steadily. Unlike sodium or trans fats, which actively provoke stress responses, the absence of potassium, magnesium, and fiber represents a subtle withdrawal of support. The body works harder to maintain equilibrium in their absence, often through hormonal adjustments that increase fluid retention and vascular tone. Fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and whole grains provide these missing nutrients naturally, offering not only biochemical benefits but also a calming signal to the body. A banana, an orange, or a handful of almonds is more than nourishment. It is a message that the system can operate smoothly, that the arteries can relax, and that the heart can maintain rhythm without extra strain. Whole grains and legumes supply fiber and minerals in a slow, sustained way, allowing blood sugar to rise gradually and reducing the inflammatory signaling that stiffens arteries. When these foods are replaced with highly processed alternatives, even meals that seem adequate in calories fail to deliver the specific support the cardiovascular system requires. Over time, the cumulative effect of missing nutrients manifests as steadily increasing pressure, fatigue in the vascular system, and an elevated risk for complications. This is why attention to what is absent from the diet can be as important as attention to what is present. Balancing the intake of potassium-rich fruits and vegetables, magnesium-rich nuts and seeds, and fiber-rich whole grains restores the body's natural capacity to regulate pressure. It is not a dramatic intervention but a gradual recalibration that allows the arteries to regain flexibility, the kidneys to excrete sodium effectively, and the heart to beat without unnecessary strain. By focusing on these nutrients and incorporating them consistently into daily meals, the body receives the tools it needs to maintain homeostasis, demonstrating how absence, when unrecognized, can be as influential as excess in the development of high blood pressure. Each meal then becomes a deliberate act of support, restoring the subtle equilibrium that sustains cardiovascular health, illustrating the quiet yet profound power of what we choose to include or omit in our diets. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with friends or family who might benefit, and subscribe to the channel for more practical tips on managing high blood pressure and improving heart health naturally. Your support helps us create more content that empowers you to take charge of your well-being.